What's up, everyone, and welcome into the Buffalo Sports Collective. It is Monday, March 13th, 2023. Almost forgot what day of the week it is. As always, I am PK alongside my co-host Phil. Phil, busy weekend it was, even though Sunday there was no games to look forward to, but we are going to be talking about 5 total games since the last time we hosted a podcast.
These Friday games are really throwing me off for the Bandits as to the rest of the weekend, because the next day feels like Sunday the entire day until I realize it's Saturday, which is a good feeling and a much better feeling than them playing on a Sunday and realizing that you have to go to work the next day. So it's an okay feeling, but it has thrown off my last 2 weekends not really knowing what day it is.
Right, it makes actually the weekend feel like a 3-day weekend, even though it's still only a 2-day weekend.
Really does.
It's a weird sensation. So if you also agree with us, let us know by following us on Facebook and Instagram at Buffalo Sports Collective and on Twitter, Buffalo Sports Co. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our website at buffalosportscollective.com and check for the time breakdowns in the description of the show. Phil, it was like deja vu all over again. I'm Yogi Berra here. Friday, again, another Halifax game and another 10-9 victory, but this time in overtime. I think it was Dave Buchanan, the sideline reporter for the or maybe it wasn't him. I can't remember who it was. I would like to give you credit, but I can't. It was their 6th straight overtime win since the 2019 finals loss, and pretty impressive that they've made it to 6 overtimes and won every single one of them. But we got good news before this one. Josh Byrne and Chris Cloutier came back, and they were really, really good. It's like they didn't skip a beat when they were out, because Clouch had 4, Byrne had 3, Buchanan had 2, and Kuznetsnikov had 1. His first career goal. Congrats to him. It's long time in the process, or long time waiting. I don't know the correct stance, but yeah, that's the right word. Sure, we'll go with that. But almost 4 years sidelined, waiting to come back, working his tail off, and it was great to see him get a goal. Vince, again, this might have been his best performance of the year so far. 48 saves. Shots were 57-49 in favor of the Birds. Faceoffs, Withers did get to Adler, but Adler held his own. He didn't really let Withers win any clean ones. It was 16-7. And then the power plays, everybody 8. Birds went 2 for 4, and the Bandits 3 for 4.
It was a really good game. It was, we say it way too often, and it's honestly a little bit annoying how often it comes up, but it comes up so often because it's true, and that is the fact that lacrosse is 100% still a game of runs, and that is exactly how this entire game ended up finishing out. 6 for Halifax, and then the Bandits just went to town and really shut Halifax down, scored 4 of their own to win it. But, this game is pretty much just the definition of what it means to have runs in lacrosse. You had 2 humongous runs that completely swung the game one way and then swung it back just enough for the Bandits' victory. Pretty insane to see.
Yeah, it was a pretty hard-hitting game. I think we said it on the Friday show that we were expecting it to be a hard-hitting, low-scoring first half, and then the second half they were going to calm it down and figure it out. And I thought that's kind of how it started. 1 goal in the first quarter and 5-3 at halftime. Bandits had the lead for the first time in who knows how long, Phil. It was. I think you sent me a message at halftime and went, "What do we do? We have the halftime lead." And I don't think I want them to have the halftime lead anymore, because the third quarter was real bad. I think they got outscored 5-1, and the only goal that was scored was Clouch real quick, and I think it was 18 seconds in.
It was 19 seconds, and then nothing.
Yeah, and then it was they went into a shell. Let's go back to the old times of not having the lead at half.
Yeah, I completely agree. I like keeping it close at half and then blowing the doors off in the third and then holding on in the fourth it makes you feel a lot better than leading at half, which means very little, and then getting crushed in the third and having a very nail-biting fourth just to come back and tie it and then win in overtime. I don't like that system, so if we can flip back to losing at half and having domination in the third and then winning the game, I like that much better.
Yeah, I guess we can start kind of going through the game. The biggest thing that I noticed was going into the fourth quarter, it kind of felt like the Albany game, where the offense was just kind of out of sync. And that kind of makes sense with, Chris Cloutier not playing since week 2. Josh Byrne's been out for the last 3.5 games. So you got to integrate them back into an offense that had been thriving. Well, not even thriving, but gelling together in a different style of offense where you're not having a guy hold onto the ball for 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds, where you're working the ball around, everybody's getting a touch. It seemed like when you got Josh Byrne and Chris Cloutier back, and this is not a shot at getting them back whatsoever. We were both waiting for them to come back to see what this offense looked like again. But it seemed like it took them a bit to get back in the groove of it, and they came in the perfect time because the fourth quarter they gelled and they did just enough to get the win. And like the old saying, you don't ask how, you ask how many, and they got enough to walk out the door with their 6th straight win and the first team to reach double-digit wins on the year.
Yeah, I think the offense looked weird, and I think it was a little bit of force feeding the newbies that are old but now back to the team and new in Clouch and Byrne. I think it was just really trying to get them to be a big part of the game, and I mean they had the hot hand, so why not continue to go back to them over and over? But for the most part, it was just weird. I mean, for me and my total, I had them getting 7 outside goals, 3 inside. One of them was the Byrne dive through the crease, which I am not sure actually went in, and I have no idea why Halifax did not challenge that, especially at that point in the game. Made no sense to me. Maybe they had a better angle than we were offered at the arena, but it looked very suspect at best, and I'm surprised they didn't end up challenging that one. But another one was Buchanan's dive from behind the net where the shot got deflected, went right to him. So that one's a little bit tricky to really give them as an inside goal. And there was the other one with Buchanan standing right on the crease, and that was a really good one. But outside of that, all of their goals came from pretty far out. I mean, most of Byrne's goals, other than the diving one, were really far out. Even Cloutier, kind of in his wheelhouse, that area over there where he loves to snipe from, which is perfectly fine. But also those were pretty far out. And it wasn't even the fact that they were long shots and they were going in or anything like that, but the entire offense when they were on the field were not only to the outside, but so far to the outside. They weren't anywhere near the middle of the field at all. It was just very strange from what, like you said, like we've seen more recently with this offense. I know it would obviously look a little different with these two, but the offense so far more recently has been a lot closer to the net, playing a lot more in the middle, playing a lot more physical. In this game, they seemed to get pushed way to the outside. It was a game that you could definitely tell Brandon Robinson was missed and that he would have had a pretty big impact in helping this offense kind of break through and get to the inside of the net or just get on top of Hill a little bit more. And they had a lot of opportunities that were stoned by Hill, and they actually did look really good. I think they could have had a lot more than 10, but some things just didn't go their way. But for the most part, they did look a little bit off, and hopefully next time we see them, it's a little bit more of what we saw in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I felt the same way, that the score probably should have been higher than 10-9 because the goaltenders in that first half were just making monster saves. I can think of a handful of them. You had the one where Ethan O'Connor was on the breakaway and he made that save, and then Dylan Robinson came up. I'll hand it to him. I'm not going to roast the kid because he's a 18, 19-year-old rookie. He just missed a wide open net. It's going to happen. I mean, I think I would shoot it into the crowd. I don't even think I could have picked up the loose ball, so I'm not going to rip him for it, but it was a wide open net. That one was a bit of a letdown. There was multiple breakaways. I think 4 or 5 of them where they either just missed the net or Hill came up huge. Matt Vince came up huge in this one. The goaltenders were just playing toe for toe in the first half. The second half, both of them just played an unbelievable game. But I know I gave Johnny T a lot of credit on the last show. I said I think we just don't give him enough credit. So I took note of this one play. It was out of the 10-minute break in the second quarter where it seemed like it was a design play by Johnny T to come back in because they knew they had the ball. Everyone was up top at first because Josh Byrne had the ball. Like all 4 guys, they pretty much created a wall right above, like right below the restraining line, I guess I would call it. Then Byrne, they want to kind of open it up so he could kind of get in the middle. That was cut off, so they shot it over to Dane. Everybody else cleared to that side, tried to take somebody one-on-one, couldn't do it. So Byrne snuck back up top, right in the middle of the field, and just sniped one. I thought that was a huge, beautiful play design where you could kind of see it all working together and all the pieces were working perfectly, and the design was done perfectly by JT.
Yeah, I thought they went to the Buchanan behind the net shot a few too many times in this one that just clearly wasn't working. There was the one, I mean, I don't really know how many of them were actually on Buchanan or anything like that. And there was one play call out of a timeout. I don't know if it was before the first half, maybe, where Buchanan was streaking and Byrne tried to kind of no-look hit him and just kind of like spike the pass. But there was another player, Buchanan was behind the net, and Dane ripped like a 100-mile-an-hour shot at him, and it was over his head, and it just didn't end up working out. It was pretty funny because I think Buchanan ended up diving anyway as if he had the ball, but it wasn't even close. But overall, some of the play calls, like you said, and coming out of timeouts, now this is back-to-back games talking about just giving a coach credit that in the overtime, they have won the game just after their timeout break that they took in the overtime. The first game, they won in the overtime recently against Philly, not against Halifax the first time, but against Philly. It only took them one possession for the Bandits after their timeout, and this one, it took them to their second possession when they called timeout and scored immediately on the next possession after the timeout. So that's another testament to just how great Johnny's been and what this team's been able to do in overtime, taking care of these 2 overtimes with a total of 3 offensive possessions.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they can use next week where they try to look for a bit of a revenge. You can't really revenge Colorado Mammoth for beating you on your own home field in the finals last year, but you can, push their nose in it a bit further down in the standings where they're at right now. So you can kind of hopefully use that to try to gel your team a bit more if Frazier's coming back, if Nanako's coming back, because both of those guys also did not play. That's why you don't trust players. Phil, how many times have we said it? Don't trust players when they say they're going to come back, because it's up to the team, not up to the players. We heard how many times Josh Byrne was going to be coming back, and he finally came back 3.5 games after there was reported that he was going to be coming back. So don't trust players. But I think using the Colorado game next Saturday, or this coming Saturday, will be a good stepping stone to the rest of the season, because after that you get San Diego, then you get Toronto, one more time, you got Albany and New York mixed in there also. But the remaining 6 games, it's no cakewalk whatsoever, and you need to get this offense gelling and looking forward to the playoffs. But I guess with that, Clouch 4-1-5 in his return. Byrne had a part in all goals except for the second Clouch power play goal in the second period. Bucky had those 2 big goals, and then Dane Smith, I didn't even notice this until I looked at the box score. He had 7 assists. Is that the quietest, most silent 7 assists we've ever seen with this team? I know the team in Halifax did well last week in the first half of shutting him down. They did a really good job of shutting him down, but he was still able to, distribute 7 assists. I had no idea he had 7.
Yeah, I think this is right back to how they were at the beginning of the year when Clouch and Byrne were in. And even when Clouch went out, when Byrne was still there, Dane Smith was not scoring at all, but he was putting up 8, 9, 10, 11 points a game simply based on assists. And like you said, they're all very quiet. He just goes out there, finds people that are open, draws a lot of players to him and makes magic happen. But like you said, he just early in the season was not needed to really shoot that much, to score all that often. And this one, he ended up with 9 shots, no goals, but his assists were what really mattered to him. And then Byrne and Cloutier in their first games back, Byrne had 12 shots and Cloutier with 11 shots, both of those leading the way. Outside of that, Buchanan was the next highest with 6. So the big 3 of Cloutier, Byrne, and Smith all had the most shots, but Byrne and Cloutier, you could absolutely tell, missed the game of lacrosse quite a bit and came out just absolutely on fire and just wanted to be as impactful as humanly possible in this game. And my goodness, for being off as long as they were feeling it.
Yeah, let's move on to the side that I don't think ever gets enough recognition, and they usually get the most blame for what's going on the field most of the time, and that's the defense and Matt Events. This is the 8th game. Phil, they've played 12 games. This is the 8th game. They've allowed 10 or less goals. They're just playing unbelievable lacrosse on the back end now. Unbelievable defense. You can talk about the third quarter all you want. They still only gave up 9 goals total. It's unbelievable what they were able to do. They were able to adjust after that early fourth quarter goal where that was their 6th straight. They buckled down. Matty Vince buckled down, and they made the saves and the stops when they needed to. 10 caused turnovers for this team. Benny 1, 2, and 3. Bushi 3 goals on 12 shots. Pedersen only had 3 assists. Fennell 2 goals. Stotts 2, 2, and 4 on 11 shots. Jamison 3 assists. You were able to take another offense that went into this week and the week before and had the most goals in the league by, I think it was like 13.8 or something like that. You gave up 18 total goals between 2 games. Unbelievable what these back-to-back performances were between the defense and Matty Vince. 48 saves, unbelievable. And some of them, he kept this score. And Hill, I already gave him credit, but I'm talking about Matty Vince now. I think Matty Vince stood on his head in the first half and kept it a 5-3 game when it could have been a little bit worse than that. I mean, you can't talk enough about what this defense and Matty Vince has done so far in the year.
Yeah, he had at least 2, if not more, clear-cut, wide-open breakaways that he had to stop, and they were just... Those plays in lacrosse are very difficult to shut down. The one was essentially a penalty shot. There was nobody near him from half all the way there. Sometimes you have a defender at least running after you to apply a little pressure. There was no one whatsoever in the area. Player had all the time in the world, and Vince was able to stop him. Then there was that incredible lob pass by Hill that I forgot who caught up to it, but somebody caught up to it right before they got to Vince, and Vince made that incredible kick save to hold the Bandits in it. I mean, even that fourth quarter, you figure Halifax got that one early goal, and after that, it was just all Bandits, and he was able to shut them down the rest of the way. Not only that last-ditch effort that they had right before the overtime, but then including the 2 possessions I believe they had in overtime to stop them then as well to then get the win. I mean, Vince played really, really well. I think last game, the defense outplayed Vince by a smidge, but Vince still played really well. And I think in this one, Vince outplayed the defense because they allowed a few more in tight opportunities than they did last game. And when they did, Vince was there to shut it down.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And anybody that's just listening to the show the first time, we normally don't pat the team on the back this often. It's just everything that they've been able to accomplish this year, it's hard not to give them the credit that they absolutely deserve. I mean, for the last 3 games, they've had, one of their normal, maybe 2 with Buchanan, but he's more of the, grinded out hustle guy. He's not relied upon to be the big-time point producer. Nanako's been in and out of the lineup. McCulley, I think, is nursing some kind of injury that he went out last week. It's just this offense has been patched together all year long. The defense and Matty Vince has stepped up unbelievable. Like I said, 8 times, 10 or less goals in the 12 games they played so far. It's hard to find critical things to say about this team right now because they're just on a groove. I mean, like we said, what is this team going to look like when they're full strength, when they're everybody's coming back? Like the big name forwards and the top defense are back. What is this league going to be able to do with the Buffalo Bandits? I mean, they're in the driver's seat to continue to look towards that elusive title that they've been missing. I think this is a group that's hungry for it. I think last year really put a big damper on what their game plan was, but I think it was you last week said about what Ian McKay was saying, where they're facing adversity now, so they're going to be better prepared for the playoffs, and I think that's exactly what they're doing. This is another game of it. I mean, 2 overtime victories so far this year. Every game's been getting closer and closer, and they're just getting healthier and healthier now.
I mean, yeah, this game is a huge example of a 6-goal run by Halifax that the Bandits absolutely could have just hung their heads, packed it in, and gave up. And instead, they turned that fourth quarter down 9-6, came all the way back without allowing Halifax to score, and then took it in overtime. And that's a prime example of, just you could have taken that third quarter, accepted that you just let a lead that you had slip through, let them get 3 goals ahead of you, so they came all the way back, had a huge run, had all the momentum, and the Bandits were able to flip that around, get it right back, and then able to get the victory in the end. I mean, yeah, it's overtime, yeah, it wasn't by much, but this is also a Halifax team that is beyond desperate, just trying to fight to stay in playoff contention at all, let alone take down one of the best teams in the league. And for the Bandits to be able to shut them down completely in the fourth outside the one early goal and come all the way back, I mean, that's just another example of the adversity of just not giving up, burying their heads and just really finding a way to win, which is what they did last week, and they continue to do it. And somehow we're sitting here 10-2. And again, I honestly don't know how they have 10 wins, but I will absolutely take it.
So they got 6 more games, 3 home, 3 away. They got Colorado next week at home. Well, Saturday. They got Toronto at home and New York at home. And then they got the Seals on the road, Toronto on the road, and Albany on the road. So like I said, is not letting up. Those 2 Toronto games are going to be massive because Toronto's keeping pace with the Buffalo Bandits. Rochester's keeping pace. It's going to be it's going to be a weird 3-headed race, even though the third team in Rochester we thought was going to end up being Halifax. Halifax is trending backwards. So it's, like you said, perfectly. They are out to look for hanging on to a playoff opportunity, and they are just barely doing it by the skin of their teeth. But Phil, we'll move on to the BSC update here. I would like to apologize because I forgot to ask us if we wanted to make any BSC changes last week. So, that's on me. That's my bad. I scored 34.5, and your crippling walking wounded team scored 17.5. I'm sorry. I'm up by it's 2013.05 to 1780.22. I crossed the 2000 mark. Yay!
Yeah, I was thinking about it as we were watching them play and certain players scoring a lot. I was like, I don't think my team was at all ready for this game. And the BSC was like, wait, I feel like I should have some of these players. I definitely do not have any of them. So that's interesting. But
if it helps, I think you would have only picked up Frazier, because I don't think there was any knowledge that Clouch was going to be back. So
yeah,
I think in the end, it still would have been this, maybe? Question mark.
Yeah, I mean, Fraser probably wouldn't have been. You have Buchanan, so yeah, it probably wouldn't have made any difference. But this upcoming one, if there's a few hot names out there for our next episode, that'll be interesting to see who gets who.
Yeah, it'll be I'm sure the coin is itching to make his reappearance back into this. But we'll move on to the milestones. Not as many hits, so I'm just going to copy and paste and put those onto the next episode when we read milestones again. But Max Adler did pass Nick Weiss for 6 all-time in face-off opportunities. Great for him, and he's been a very unsung hero so far this year. I know he's still under 50% of face-offs, but you're not getting those clean win opportunities that you had been getting before he joined the team. So huge for him. Dane Smith, he's up to he's got 5th place all to himself with 67 assists so far in this single season for the Buffalo Bandits. Just unbelievable what he's been able to accomplish. He is, I believe, and don't fact check me because I didn't do the math yet, but I think he's still on pace to break his own record and the NLL record, which is also his for assists in a single season. And he is also up to tied for 14th with 94 points in a single season for the Buffalo Bandits. Once again, I don't know how he keeps doing it, and he had 7 assists so quietly. I mean, you rarely heard his name, but 7 points in this game. Really, really good at this sport, Phil.
Yeah, I think if I'm trying to look it up super quick for season records, and of course this is going to be more complicated than I want it to be. I'm scrolling, but I think it's 95 that he needs to break his own assist record. It is
90. Yes, he had 94 last year, so 95 is the record, and then 137 points is the record for that.
All right, so at least assists. I think if all of my math that I did super quick is correct, he needs 4.6 on average a game for the rest of the season. He's currently averaging 5.5, so he is about a point ahead of a pace to break his assist record. I did not do the points that quickly. Also, Jeff Teat is a monster and kind of hanging with him for points in a single season, so that'll be a fun battle for the end of the year. But I think Dane Smith, especially in this last game, kind of appreciated having some of his offensive firepower back in his back pocket to throw those 7 assists back out there.
Yeah, maybe just a little. I think
bit.
He appreciated it just a little. But we'll do a look around the league real quick. Toronto, who's sitting at 10-3, they defeated Albany 12-6. Rochester just took down Georgia on the Sunday game 19-18, so they moved to 9-3, 9-4. I think it's 9-4. Let me pull it up.
3, I believe.
9-3. Thank you. Because, yep, you're right. 9-3. They're a game behind, and they can keep pace with Toronto if they win another one. That's the math there. But the Wings lost to New York to fall to 5-6. They're 13-10 loss over New York, and the Birds with the loss to the Bandits fall to 5-7. So, like we said in the beginning, it's a 3-headed race, I believe. And I haven't dug too deeply into this, but I believe if Buffalo wins next week over Colorado and Philly loses, Bandits clinch a playoff spot already with 5 games to go after that. It'll be a little bit relaxing to know they're definitely in the playoffs, but then they got some work to do to not only clinch a top seed, but to clinch the top seed overall in the NLL.
Yeah, we mentioned last year they were 14-4 and kind of barely snuck out with the East, let alone everything overall. And every single game and every single loss was going to be huge and matter a ton. And here we are sitting 10-2, and you'd think, oh, 10-2 is an absolutely incredible record. I'm sure they are in the driver's seat for everything, and they're not for anything right now. The East is still wide open with Toronto and Rochester, and the West, San Diego, still sitting there with only 2 losses. I believe they're 8-2, so they're a little bit behind as far as games played, and obviously the Bandits play them. So it's one of those situations where I don't see this happening because it would just be beyond incredible. But if the Bandits happen to win every single one of their games the rest of the year, they will take number 1 in the entire NLL. So technically, their own fate is in their hands, but good luck beating Toronto twice and San Diego and Colorado and all these other games. I mean, winning, what are they up to, 6 in a row right now? I think winning another 6 against some of those incredible teams would be really, really impressive. But theoretically, their fate is in their own hands right now. If they win out, they would be number 1 in the NLL. But just simply, we kind of mentioned how every loss is massive. They're sitting with only 2 losses, and they're not really safe in the East or in the entire NLL to get the number 1 overall seed. So every loss, every game is huge in this league.
More games or more work to do. They're in the driver's seat, but a lot of teams are right on their tail. So on our next show, we will talk about the Bandits facing the I don't want to call them arch rivals, but the ones that kept them from a title last year in the Colorado Mammoth, who are even more walking wounded than the Buffalo Bandits are right now. It's unbelievable what they're going through. So we'll move on to the Buffalo Beauts here, Phil. For the final time in the 2022-2023 season, we will close out the Buffalo Beauts season with the recaps right here. Friday, they took on the Metropolitan Riveters. Lost 5-2. Goals by MGM and Maud. Bernston made 31 of 36 saves. Shots were 36-24 in favor of the Rivs. And then Saturday, same result. Rivs took them down 3-2. Maud and Kepler had the goals. Ridgewell, unbelievable performance. 42 of 45 saves. Shots were 45-28 in favor of the Rivs. Let's talk about the Friday game first.
Yeah, it's just another, sadly, kind of going back a little bit to their beginning of the season, just playing a little bit sloppy, playing not like the team that we've seen improving over these last few games and few series that have been slowly progressing. And again, with a younger team, we're just expecting them to hopefully finish the season strong, kind of like the Sabres did last year, and roll that into next year. But this was more of the same that we saw at the beginning of the year, being outshot, being outplayed, just sloppy, not really doing the little things all that well between passing, getting the puck out of the zone, just overall not their best game. And I mean, the 2 they got were fantastic. MGM continues to have an absolutely incredible season, especially the finish to the season. She's just been on a mission to make sure she gets at least 1 goal a game, doing everything in her power, and she did a really good job again. But the team as a whole just looked a little sloppy in a kind of end of season, kind of going out on a bang, and just kind of fell flat.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very calm first 10 minutes until MGM. It was a great move. She went behind the net, kind of fake going across, cut back, and fed the puck in front, and Maud just buried it. Then right off the faceoff, 4-on-4, one-timer, really low, beat Bernie. I don't think she really saw it. I don't think she was expecting it, and I don't think she was expecting it to be so low on the ice. It was maybe a few inches off the ground, and it just snuck by her between the post and her pad. Second one, MGM just battled through the defender, just sniped it, knocked the water bottle off the back of the net. Beautiful goal, just outworked the defense. Then another shorthanded goal. This seems to bite the Buffalo Bandits or Buffalo Beauts. Phil, I want to make it through an episode without doing that. The Buffalo Beauts.
You gave up a little early in this one.
I did. Usually the last 2 episodes have been very end, so I will be perfect in the end. But they've given up a lot of shorthanded goals this year, and the Rivs just 2-on-2. They tied it 2-2. Turnover on their own end. I think it was Matska who couldn't handle the pass. Just went in, beat Bernie 1-on-1. Like you said, passing all day was just been very sloppy. They weren't stick to stick. They were trying to lead players, and it was too far or too short. It seemed like they were almost afraid to hurt the puck, and I'm not trying to be mean, but to try to get the puck out of the end, they were too soft on it. They were too soft protecting the puck. The back checks were getting them all day. 2:18 left, Bernie made the first save, and then the loose puck, it was buried. You got to be looking for that loose puck to clear it. Into the third period, 2:16 in, Pelkey grabs the puck, and it was a very weird play sequence. She kind of picked it up in the middle of the ice, turned, buried it. I think Berntsen should have had that one, and I think she wants that one back. But they were playing a bit more aggressive with more opportunities in the third. It just seemed like they fell too far back, and when the Metro packed it in, there wasn't much the Beauts could do. But I was hoping that the Saturday game, where it was just one final game to the season, it would pick up, and I think it did, just in a direction that I don't think anybody actually saw coming.
Yeah, I think that the direction you're talking about and the direction it took is kind of just a simple direction of frustration with the entire season. And again, the game itself, obviously a little closer, shots even farther apart than they were. Ridgewell played absolutely incredible, 42 saves. Again, we see that, I mean, maybe it's just by following the Beauts that we see 40-plus saves by a goalie more often than we should, but anytime a goalie in any sport, in any, level of hockey gets 40-plus saves, that's just an incredible performance, only allowing 3, but I believe the ejections and the penalty minutes are kind of what you're talking about, and I think that really just comes down to being frustrated with the end of your season, not going where you want, especially with both teams out of playoffs. It's just kind of, I would assume both teams were pretty chippy, frustrated, and even with that game you mentioned right before that they looked a little bit too soft in that Friday game. I'm sure Saturday getting a little bit more physical, a little bit more angry, end of the season, frustration really building kind of led to that. I mean, another loss, yes, but at least it kind of went out with a little bit of a fight and not really playing all that great, but at the same time, just kind of like you mentioned, the frustration built, I think, for the entire season, and this was the last game of the year, and they kind of just let loose.
Yeah, I think I read that they had, or there was a report out there that they had a closed door meeting after that Friday game. So going into this one, I was expecting to see a good run. I mean, early in the first, it was a great rush by Newton, goes hard to the net, loose puck in front. Metro can't clear it. Kepler's right there to push her way through and then just tap it in. It was one of the easier finishes, but a tough result to get to that point. It was good back and forth. A lot of great saves by the two goalies at the end of the first. It was 1-0 Beauts. Odd rush back in the second. Ripper beat Ridgewell. Healy, this is the one issue I had in this game, and I don't think I've been too critical of the refs for this one. It was a very, very soft ejection. Healy should not have been tossed for that one. If you want to give her the 5 minutes, give her the 5 minutes. But the player in, I think it was Packer, took the puck, turned her back towards the boards, and then Healy, it wasn't even a hard check. Like, I can understand you're trying to get rid of that hit in hockey, and I'm agreeing with it so you can keep your top players still on the ice, but she barely pushed her, and she went face first in the boards. If you want to give her a 5, I completely agree with that, and that's fine, but I wouldn't have tossed her. It's such a weak call. Then right after that, MGM, she went to the box for another weak call, checking from behind. I can kind of see that would be called checking from behind. But again, it was just a weak call. It was 2 back-to-back weak calls. 5-on-3 with the Metro here. It was Packer, the one that scored, the one that got hit into the boards. Weird angle shot to make it 2-1. They were able to kill off the rest of it, but the power play, which they seemed to struggle with after the beginning of the season, it killed them. They were 0 for 4. Second period, they had many opportunities. Going into the third, MGM tied it up. Great opportunity. She just was a monster. Grabs the rebound and was able to somehow feed Maud to second in as many games. It was a beautiful feed right back to her, and it was a great finish. 2-2. You go into it, but then a deflected shot. You hate to lose games like this because it was such a great deflected shot, but Ridgewell just had no opportunities to it, and that was the end. And it was a 3-2 loss. But towards the end of the game is when it got chippy. I mean, 2 to 3 minutes left. Maud gets pushed to the ground, and that's when Bejeweled came. She was the one that pushed her and was kind of pinning her down. That's when MGM went over, ripped her off, and was tossing a few punches. It wasn't hard punches or anything, but both those got kicked out. Then the end of the game, Maud again gets hit hard into the boards, her head slammed into the boards. Then there was a small scrum in front, and all the Metro players were on the ice. Maud, Dobson, Newton, and McPherson were all involved in it. I think that is the culmination of the end of the year where it was just such frustration that your season's over. There's nothing else you can do about it. And besides like just have a little bit of a scrum, but I think the players out there were the perfect ones to be out there in that situation.
And honestly, it's those situations that kind of show you who wants to be there next year. I mean, you should be absolutely frustrated with the season you had, but even in this situation, I mean, MGM, for the most part, could have just kind of let that go and been like, it's the end of the year, I'm not going to worry about it. But going over and defending your player who's getting shoved down and, like you said, throwing a few punches, hard or not, still going over there and just defending your player, working really hard in these last 2 games. MGM really has that kind of captain-type material and wants to be here, wants to play hard. Hopefully she is back next year. I believe she has a 2-year contract.
I will look that up as you keep talking.
She should be back next year, but even like you said, the other players, Maud, Dobson, Newton, and McPherson, those are all players that you can tell want to be here, want to stay around, and are just frustrated with the end of the year, frustrated with how their season went, and you're just kind of left to doing what they did and getting in a bit of a small scrum simply out of frustration. Like you said, Healy getting ejected, would have rather have seen a 5-minute, and I don't know, those are depressing weak calls when somebody gets thrown out. I mean, like you said, it was a situation where it wasn't a very big hit, and I mean that's why you have the ability to give a 2, a 5, or a game is, kind of depends on how hard or how violent the hit was, especially if you're going to toss a player. So for that to get that kind of ejection seems kind of weak, but she's another one who had an incredible season, someone who I think really plays hard, really wants to be here, and hopefully she's back again next year. But the whole entire game kind of culminated to a very frustrating season for the Beauts, and hopefully they can take some of that attitude and start pushing it toward next season.
MGM signed a 1-year deal, so she would have to re-up, but Healy, who you were just talking about, she's on a 2-year deal, so she will be back unless there's some unexpected moves played, and I'm happy she's back because her and Kramer were a great 1-2 pair to all year. I mean, those were 2 that you could rely on in the back end and not have to really worry about much. It was nice to have both of them back there. But yeah, Phil, it was a letdown of a first season for us, but I think that I'm trying to figure out a great way to phrase it. It's not the season that you would have hoped to be for our first one, but I think in total, I had a good time covering this team, and I look forward to the offseason and to see what kind of moves are made for this team, because that's back-to-back years of finishing dead last in the league, especially after you have a Montreal Force and expansion team that just joined the league as well. So it'll be interesting to see what the ownership and the leadership group thinks about back-to-back years of, shortcomings for a team that had been used to competing for the Isabel Cup year in and year out. So it's going to be a very must-watch offseason for the Buffalo Beauts.
And no offense, but I mean, if we're going to cover a Buffalo team, you got to start from the very beginning when you're, missing playoffs. They're not very good. That's when you jump in, really get behind the team, and then you enjoy watching them rally like the Bills did, like the Sabres did. The Bandits, I think, have had one really bad year in the last 16 bajillion decades. They're just a really good team. It was when
you got Josh Byrne.
But they had a really bad year, got Josh Byrne, then we got to watch them rebuild into their incredible team that they are today and now. And like you said, Josh Byrne, where would we be without him? I don't know. 3 goals, 6 assists. The dude's amazing. But it's exciting to, in a weird way, kind of watch this team bottom out, like you said, back-to-back years in dead last. But now we get to watch a little bit of this team's rebuild, and hopefully they can make some moves and come back as a better, stronger team next season.
So on our Friday show, we will hand out our BSC awards. And this is not a podcast that goes away when your season over. We will keep everybody up to date on what transpires in the offseason for the Buffalo Beauts. But we'll move on to the BSC update. Phil, I'm sorry, but I beat you once again. I scored 9, you scored 3. So the final scores for the Buffalo Beauts here in the BSC Buffalo Beauts. You scored 81 in the 24-game season. I scored 85.5. So barely took you down, but I still outscored you. In total, MGM was the highest point getter with 37.5. In second place was Kepler with 27. And then you had Kramer, who had 19. So 3 top performers, and you had 2 of them. But MGM, just a beast.
I think Healy's ejection should count at least for 10 points in the Beauts.
I don't agree.
We're going to have to go to the coin, I think, for that one.
I don't think the coin has say in that.
I think, Healy was looking for a hat trick had she not been ejected so early on a bad call. So I'm gonna blame the ref. I'm gonna blame the ref.
If that's what helps you sleep at night, Phil. So we'll go on to the milestones here. Cassidy McPherson is now the player that has played the most games in a Buffalo Beauts sweater. Congrats to her. Dominique Kramer is into 6th place in Buffalo Beauts history in games played. Claudia Kepler, God, I am butchering names today. She has moved up into a tie for 7th in total goals for the Buffalo Beauts. Congrats to her. MGM is she's got 9th place all to herself with career in scoring for the Buffalo Beauts. Huge accomplishments for all 4 of those players in the conclusion of the Buffalo Beauts season, Phil. It was a great first season for us, and we look forward to Friday when we hand out some most coveted awards in sports and entertainment history. It's the BSC Award Show.
Yeah, I think we're going to possibly update this year to pieces of paper that will be sent by mail.
Yeah, sent by mail. Stand by your mailbox, hang it up over your mantelpiece.
Or at least we will send them to the Northtown Center, and you can pick them up next season.
You can do that also. I don't really care how you get it, and just send us a message. And just make sure you frame it and tweet it and send it out and brag about the piece of paper you do have. We don't even frame it. You have to frame it yourselves. We're not making money over here.
We don't have any money.
You're the professional athletes that are making money. We're not. There you go. But we'll move on to our Buffalo Sabres here, Phil. I don't really want to talk about them anymore.
Yeah,
I don't want to. This is kind of like the beginning of last season where I was just counting down the days, and then they went on a huge winning streak. Well, the winning streak started earlier in the season, and now I'm just sad, depressed, and a shell of myself. So Thursday versus the Stars, 10-4 loss. Greenway, Okposo, Skinner, and Olaf scored. Who cares? You lost 10-4. Comrie, 39 of 49 saves. Shots were 49-29 in favor of the Stars. Gross. Saturday versus the Rangers. Much better game, but guess what? You still lost. 2-1 in overtime. Skinner, he's got his 29th goal. He's going to be looking for 30 pretty soon. UPL, 24 of 26 saves. Shots were 33-26 in favor of the Sabres. Phil, somehow their record is still above 500, 32, 28, and 5. I understand it was a rebuilding season, but I'm still sad and depressed and mad and sad, and I was fooled once again.
Yeah, and they're still in it, and they're still close.
Phil, stop.
They have to go on a win streak that they just can't seem to. I mean, one win would be a start to a streak, and we can't even get that right now. So that Stars game was. I know the 10, obviously, you look at the score and you're like, wow, that's a bad game. But I don't even think the 10 really illustrates how awful they played / didn't play at all and barely showed up. And I don't even know if they were skating around or the defense knew that Dallas wasn't wearing the same color uniform as them and just kind of let them skate completely around. I felt really bad for Comrie. I know we probably should have made some of those, not saying he is completely, free from the 10 goals, but my goodness, did the team just give up in front of him and just leave him completely out to play by himself and give up 10 goals, which is just depressing no matter what kind of goalie you are. And I mean, the team just looked awful and didn't look like they wanted to play. I really feel like, which again is something we just have not seen, but I think that Edmonton Islanders back-to-back, losing both of those hard-fought games, I think they just came into this one not ready mentally at all, kind of just hung it up, assumed their season was over, and it showed.
Yeah, I mean, 10 goals. You gave up 10 goals. The Bandits didn't even give up 10 goals on Friday. Just think about that. In lacrosse, where the scores are well into the teens, they gave up 9. You gave up 10. And again, this isn't all on Comrie. I would put maybe 20% of the things on Comrie. He was expected goals was 5.92. So 4 of the goals weren't on him, but you still lose 6-4. Last time the Buffalo Sabres gave up 10 goals, November 2nd of 2005. This was Olafson's first goal in 6 games. It's just, the team quit. And the comments after the game were the Sabres teams of the old. Hey, we weren't ready. We got to be better than this. We weren't ready for the game. We got to be playing better in front of Comrie. It's not Comrie's fault. I don't want to hear the comments. You're a young building team that you're playing for a playoff opportunity and you quit. And this is the second time this team has quit on their goaltender. The first one was Boston's game where you quit on UPL. This one you quit on Comrie. That's the one thing this team hasn't done under Granato is quit. They're the scrappy Sabres teams, the scrappy underdog team that doesn't quit. You've done it twice in 2 weeks now. And I don't think that's the acceptable part. I can get away if you give up 10 goals, 10-4. Because the Dallas Stars are a stinking good team and you're a team that's still building and looking towards the future. You're still the youngest team in the NHL. But when you give up 10 because you quit and you didn't even try, that's the part that's frustrating to me. And the comments after the game, we just talked about, Phil, about the Buffalo Beauts who are frustrated with the season in a sport where there's not really hitting, there's not really fighting. This team did nothing. You got spanked 10-4. What happened? Why isn't anybody upset? Why isn't anybody frustrated in this game? And I understand the next game versus the Rangers, you stepped up, you faced a team that's tough. I understand the rest of the season's a very tough stretch, and you're facing some of the top teams in the league. I understand that. But when you get spanked like that, how is nobody on the team going after somebody on the Dallas Stars? I'm not saying be ugly, but start a fight. Try to juvenize your team. I don't understand how you can get spanked and beaten down so bad 10-4 and nobody wants to step up to the plate and just try to spark somebody. Get the crowd into it. Something. I don't understand how that can happen on a young team like this who still had playoff opportunities and they're just letting it go down the drain.
And like you just mentioned real briefly before we move on from this hideous game, once again at home. What is wrong with this team and playing at home in front of their home fans that they just are so uninspired to play at home? Like how do you play this depressing and sad and, like you said, give up in front of your home crowd that you're playing? Like if it was away at Dallas, that's one thing, not an excuse at all, but at least it's okay. It's an away game at least. I mean, to lose 10-4 on home ice is just incredibly embarrassing. But we can move on to Saturday's game. Lost 2-1 in overtime. Like we said, good rebound game, played a lot better. Arguably should have won this one. UPL, I know only 24 of 26 saves, so the defense really stepped up. At the same time, I thought UPL did play really well in the role he was given. That overtime goal, there's nothing you're going to be able to do about that. I mean, on the penalty kill, a freak little bounce shot that got deflected and then left the guy wide open. But for the most part, I thought UPL played really well. Team played much, much better, and it's good to see them be able to rebound after these terrible games. But at the same time, season, like you said, is very quickly slipping away. But hopefully they can kind of come play spoiler or kind of be just rejuvenated, re-energized, realize. I feel like it's going to take them half a second. I feel like that hopefully that Stars game was the game where they kind of, I mean, even at that point, I think their season was still okay and still kind of, had they won that one and been able to go on a little bit of a run, you still would have been in it. But I think that was the one that they kind of gave up in, saying that their season is probably over as far as playoffs go. So hopefully this Rangers game was one that they kind of collected themselves, realized they still have something to play for in general, even if it's upsetting other teams, going out with a bang, getting some wins, stringing some stuff together, realizing that you had a really good season for a team that realistically shouldn't have been probably even this close at this point in the season. So hopefully this Rangers game is a little bit of a turning point. They can kind of finish the season strong.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this team rebounds very well after bad losses. You think of the Boston game where they lost 7-1. They came back and spanked Tampa and just looked like the better team 5-3. It's just this 4-game losing streak where you get one possible point out of 8. That's what killed you. The New York Islanders game where you lost 3-2, where it was the kick and goal. That to me was almost the nail in the coffin, because I understand, and I went in hard on that 10-4 game. I can understand them being down for that Dallas game. That New York game was a huge opportunity for them to get right back in the playoff race, and you lost on a kick and goal. So to lose 10-4, I can kind of see that. It's just where was the effort? Like, where was it? It just wasn't there. But this game, they came out to play. I mean, the playoffs are almost certain not going to happen now unless they go on some unbelievable streak and get some help. But I would like to see them end at least on a nice run, because this team, the building blocks are here. The majority of this team that is in place is going to be here, and it's the team that's going to try to make the playoffs. So you can't go down and just die quietly. Play spoiler. There's still teams that are on your schedule that are looking to making playoffs and move up the ladder. Play spoiler. If that's the kind of momentum you need, just go into it. There's some tough teams coming up. You got Boston. You got New York, Toronto. There's still a lot of teams that are trying to move up and get placement into the playoffs in that stupid playoff system. But you're going to have to do it without Samuelson. You're going to have to do it without Comrie. Maybe being down to 2 goalies again and giving one of them the opportunity to seize the net, Anderson or UPL, probably UPL, because Anderson can't play back-to-back and they only want to play him once or twice a week. But this is another opportunity. Devin Levi, his season is most likely done. I think there's still an outside chance they make the tournament, but it's very unlikely. They'll find out next Sunday. He's on his way in. UPL, you're running up opportunities to kind of capture that number 1 seed. I understand Levi's probably going to be down in Rochester all next year, but he's maybe a year and a half away from trying to compete for that starting job. This is the time. You got, 16 games left in your schedule? Go make a statement. Be the number 1 goalie going into next year and see if you can hold off Levi as long as you can.
Yeah, I think overall UPL's played really well this season. He's obviously going through some growing pains. But what?
Up and down, but for the majority, it's been more ups than downs in this season.
Yeah, I think he's, like you've mentioned before, with kind of the goalies that the Sabres currently have, it's about making that humongous save to keep your team in it. And I think more often than not, he's been the one that is making that just incredible, unbelievable save that realistically you shouldn't be making. And I mean, goalies on really good teams make those saves to keep their team in it and keep their team alive. And we saw it a lot during that one streak that they had against really good teams, where they were able to string a few wins together earlier in the season. UPL was the one playing during all of those. And yes, he allowed 3, 4, 5 goals sometimes in those streaks, but at the same time, it could have been 6, 7, 8, 9 goals that were let in had he not been able to make some of those incredible saves. So, like you said, I think he's had ups and downs. He's still not the consistent number 1 you're looking for. I think he's still, it's weird to say early in his development because I feel like he's been around for a while, but he's also been really injured for a while the last 2 years. So I don't know how far that has actually set back his development as a goalie. This is the first year we've really seen him play pretty much the entire year without much of a major injury, which honestly, for the Sabres and for him as a player, that's probably the biggest thing he could have done this year, is simply play healthy the entire season. Now we have a little bit more to go, but for the most part, playing in the position he was playing in mainly as the team's number 1 goalie and staying healthy, I think is a big win for him. I think overall he's played really well. I think he needs to continue to develop. And like you said, he's got probably 1 year next year to really push and make sure he can try to keep Levi off. But Levi is going to be an incredibly tough competitor that is looking for that number 1 spot. So should be a fun goaltender competition to watch, one we really haven't had in quite a long time.
So on our next show, Buffalo is facing Toronto on Monday and the Washington Capitals on Wednesday. 2 huge games. Toronto go into their place and knock them down. They've been struggling a bit. They're injured a bit. So push their nose in it. It's always fun beating Toronto. It's always fun. So BSC update. It's almost like nothing happened in these last 2 games because you put it up 11. I put up 11. Are you making any changes to your team, which stands at Thompson, Skinner, Middlestat, Power, and Yoki? I have Tuck, Cousins, Quinn, Dowling, and Samuelson. FYI, Tuck was back practicing.
Yeah, I know you've been without Tuck forever, and I really just don't have a solid third offensive player, but there's been 0 to really step up in a long time. I know Paterka has been playing better as of late. Middlestat was playing well, but the whole team has been playing terrible. Like Pozo's getting his goals here and there. I don't know. I'll probably just stick with what I have for now.
I'm up by so much in this, but like I want the Sabres to do to Toronto, I kind of want to do to you and just push your nose in it a bit more. So I think I'm going to drop Samuelson, but it's who should I pick up for him? And I think I'll just pick up Clegg because I think he's the most entertaining defenseman left. I'm thinking Stillman, but I don't think he does enough on the ice. I think he's more of a real-life player than a fantasy player. Same with Bushkin. I'm gonna grab Clag and just hope he's the one that steps up for the Samuelson role.
I was thinking about grabbing Greenway because he's been looking interesting, I guess, and having some fun. But I don't know if he's really going to make that big of an impact for the rest of the season. But we'll see. We'll see.
Right. So even though we don't want to, we'll do the wild card watch here. First place is Pittsburgh, 65 games played, 76 points. They have Montreal on Tuesday. Second spot right now is the New York Islanders, 68 games played, 76 points. They get the Kings on Tuesday and the Ducks on Wednesday. So Ducks are towards the bottom, Kings are towards the top. It'll be interesting. Florida is in third place, 67 games played, 73 points. Washington, fourth place, 67 games played, 71 points. Tuesday, they got the Rangers. Wednesday, they got the Sabres. So 2 games back or 2 points back of them. You can try to catch them. Ottawa, 65 games played, 70 points. They got the Oilers on Tuesday, and Buffalo, 65 games played, 69 points. They got some work to do. Like we said, it's still possible, but they got to get hot. And, what a way to get Tuck back then hopefully soon. He's back practicing with the top line. I would say that's a good indication because usually when you're working your way back and you're not ready yet, you're the extra, but he was back on the top line, so I would kind of expect him to be back on Monday. It's just how healthy is he actually?
I think that's the more frustrating thing about these last 2 games. Like you said, I know that Dallas one, they're probably coming off a little bit depressing, but even if you look really closely at just the stats, I mean, we talked about games in hand for the longest time, and the biggest thing about those is winning, but if the Sabres win all of the games in hand that they currently have and the teams in front of them, Pittsburgh, I think, is far and away they're out of here. They're kind of, it's theirs, I think, right now. But if you look at the Islanders, Florida, Washington, Ottawa's obviously even with us up by 1. But if you take all the games in hand you have, you're right there with every single one of these teams. And for this team to quit on their season just because they lost 2 really good games and really hard fought games against, one of them was the Islanders, who's ahead of you right now, but they're still right there. And like you said, they have to get hot, which we just, even seeing them win 1, we said they couldn't go on a losing streak. They're on a pretty big losing streak. This is exactly what you couldn't have happen at this point in the season. But I mean, they're still right there. I'm not trying to really throw a ton of hope into this, kind of playoff idea because they have to get hot and actually start winning and go on a win streak. But it's just kind of depressing to see this team slightly give up when they're still right in the middle of a playoff race.
So we'll cover those next 2 games on our next show. But the final segment here, it is Monday, so we have to give out our BSC MVP. There was a lot of players that could have won this award. Courtney Maud finished the season 2 games, 2 goals, MGM. Unbelievable performances. 21 points, 24 games. I don't think I gave that stat. She accounted for 42% of the goals scored for the Buffalo Beauts. She could have also been it. Maddie Vince could have been it. Some of the defenders could have been it. Josh Byrne could have been it with his 9-part performance. Dane Smith, 7 assists. But we got to give it, and I think it's no shock. Chris Cloutier, 4 goals, 1 assist, 5 points, 5 loose balls in his return to the lineup. Since being out week 2 last time they faced Halifax, he was not back into week 3 versus the Toronto Rock. Overtime winner, too. Heck of a fake, Phil. I don't think we mentioned that. The fake he pulled off to draw both defenders past him and just rifle it low to high. Beautiful goal. I think I know there's might be some disagreements from some people out there, but when you're scoring an overtime winner, being out, the amount of games he's been out, I think Chris Cloutier is the best candidate for this week's BSC MVP.
Yeah, it was tough. There's a lot of good options most weeks, especially with some of the teams we cover having multiple really good players and playing multiple games before we cover an MVP. So it's really tough, but I think Cloutier's fake alone probably could have gotten MVP, not even him himself, just the fake could have gotten him MVP. I mean, watching those defenders run past him, like you mentioned, not really being set up for a humongous fake, and then him just ripping that shot. Did you jump? Did you jump this time as well?
I did, yeah.
Yep, that was also jumping. It was pretty exciting. And no more overtime, though. Can we got to stop that. I do not like overtime games in the NLL at all. So thank you, Chris Cloutier, for ending it and putting our hearts at ease. But Bandits, can you win in regulation from now on the rest of the season if you're going to win? Just no more overtime nonsense.
How about a blowout? Even last week was nerve-wracking, 10-9. Just end it. Like 14-5 game. Can we have one of those, please? So I'm already bald, Phil. I have very little hair on top of my head. My family has a bad track record of stress. This is putting unneeded stress on my heart, and I can't take it. Even producer Pat, who ended up sitting in front of us, he was looking back and goes, "How you doing?" I went, not well at all. Like, this is, it feels good because of the adrenaline rush. So it's like a good stress, but it's also bad stress because it hurts.
Yeah. Yep. And they just, like you said, we haven't had a blowout win, I think, in a long time, and I don't think that's anyone's fault other than the bajillion players that are injured. So your offense is finally getting a little bit healthy. They had this week to get back into form. Hopefully next week we see something, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 goal win would be nice. It'd be nice.
Yeah. Philly 13-12 overtime win. 10-9 last week. 10-9 overtime win this week. The biggest victory in the last few games is 16-10 over New York. And then beyond that, it was the 18-9 win at Georgia. Otherwise, it's been very close. I mean, 1-goal game, 3-goal game, 5-goal game, 9, 2, 3, 4, 6, 3, 1, 1, 1. The last few weeks, not good for the heart, Phil. Not good for the heart. But is there anything else you want to add to the show before we get ready for Colorado back in Bandit Land on Saturday?
No, let's do that and have a lovely award show for the Beauts.
Yes. So on our next show, like you said, Buffalo Beauts award show, BSC award show for the Buffalo Beauts. We got 2 Sabres games to go over. We got some free agency that is going to be possibly happening this week with free agency. The tampering period opens today. Free agency opens officially on Wednesday. And, Bills have been doing some stuff. We haven't really talked about them in a while because they haven't deserved it, Phil. They haven't deserved a spot on the BSC, but maybe we'll allow some time. But yeah, Friday's going to be a jam-packed show with a lot of stuff going on. So thank you all for listening to another episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Follow along with us on Facebook and Instagram at Buffalo Sports Collective and on Twitter at Buffalo Sports Co. Visit our website at buffalosportscollective.com. Subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts and make sure you leave us a review on Apple and Spotify. Until next time, bye-bye.